welcome. Today I am going to be continuing my. It's been a minute, first off, I should note. I want to start off by saying that. Um, Second off, I want to say that I'm in a new location because it's too hot outside, and it was getting to the point where by the end of my talk, sermon, whatever you call it, it was unbearably warm, and I had to move it inside. Um, so I'm in my bedroom. Uh, yeah. Um, so it's been a minute. I've gone through a lot of things. A lot of things have happened, to say the least. Um, Vacation, and I've been dealing with a lot of stuff uh, outside of these videos, live streams. Um, but like always, before I begin, I'm gonna go ahead and check my channel to make sure that it's good to go. Um, and of course, the title didn't update. That's awesome, but that's fine. It's interesting. So I'm using Restream, and it's a website that allows you to stream on multiple platforms at once. So I'm currently on YouTube and I'm on Twitch. Or not Twitch. I'm currently on YouTube and I'm on Vaughn Live. I used to be able to stream on all three at the same time. Three being YouTube, Vaughn Live, and Twitch. But for some reason, it appears that Restream has updated its terms and it only allows you to stream onto three or two platforms instead of three. Way back when it was brand new, you used to be able to do. I think it was at one point I had like. No, I only had three. I think at one point I tried to do four, but oh well. And I cannot see the chat. Oh, there it goes. On here. So I'll move that over there and then go over here. And I will move this. So one other note of, and I'll mention this at the very end here. Let me make sure the volume is working actually. Hold on a second. Alright, the volume is working, and I'm making double checking here to make sure that I don't make the same mistake I did on the first time I did this, where I was muted the whole time, and I actually talked for 30 minutes without actually saying anything. It looks like I'm good to go. Yeah, so it's kind of a makeshift setup here. The camera is going to be like this because it's stacked on a pile of pillows. Kind of a makeshift setup, as I said. So I've been kind of going through these different topics within Christianity with the goal here to kind of provide a framework of how one can prove the existence of God, or one where one can find proof of God. It's important to note that it's not, and something that I've thought about for a while, and I've come to find that it's not something you can just prove like you can science, or something physical, right? You want to, I find this phenomenon, I form a hypothesis, then do the experiment, form a conclusion to prove my hypothesis type thing. It doesn't really work that way when it comes to this sort of thing, because God manifests himself in people's lives differently. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get at here. In the first series of videos that I did, I talked about how forgiveness works, how God can forgive people. We're going to take kind of a step outside of that and go a little bit more not broad, but a little bit more, I guess, outside of that concept and talk about faith. Because faith is the backbone of Christianity. Excuse me. Without faith, you can't really you can't really be healed by Jesus. You can't find Jesus if you don't have faith that he exists. And what I did is I went through and I found about 5 instances of faith and how they play and the importance of faith within Christianity. And I'm going to go through a couple of examples of not only how faith can heal somebody, but how somebody who might not even have faith, faith in something they can't see, I shouldn't say not have faith, but how in faith of something they cannot see, how that is super important in Christianity. Oftentimes I tell people, they come up to me, I see in comment sections or on the internet, in various chats with people, I've come to see these people or come to read messages from these people saying, where's the proof of God? Where's God? How come I can't find God? How come I can't see him? And the first step is to seek God. And I can go on and on about that, but it really is a topic in and of itself. I want to focus on the meaning of faith today. And like I said, I have about 5 verses from the Bible that are going to provide examples of how important and the strength that that faith provides. So first off, I'm going to start off from Hebrews chapter 11. This is an Old Testament reading. So this is way back before Jesus was around. But this talks about faith because faith in God, faith in God is the backbone of what makes... Jeez, I just ate. I apologize. Faith in God is the backbone of what makes a believer a believer. You have to have faith that he will work in your lives. So Hebrews chapter 11, verses 1 through 3 says, "Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Indeed, by faith our ancestors received approval. By faith we understand that words were prepared by the word of God, that the worlds were prepared by the word of God, so that what is seen was made from things that are not visible." So again, faith in things that are not visible. You can't see them, but by faith, you're able to receive approval. So, ancestors being the Jews, this is again before the time of Jesus in Christianity. And I want to go over to, continue on in Hebrews chapter 11, with verses 4 through 7. These are examples of Abel, Enoch, and Noah, who, again, are separate Bible stories altogether. It reads, starting in chapter 4, "By faith, Abel offered to God a more acceptable sacrifice than Cain's. Through this he received approval as righteous, God himself giving approval to his gifts. He died, but through his faith he still speaks. By faith, Enoch was taken so that he did not experience death. He was not found because God had taken him. For it was attested that before he was taken away that he had pleased God. And without faith it is impossible to please God. For whoever would approach him must also believe he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. By faith, Noah, warned by God about events as yet unseen, respected the warnings and built an ark to save his household. By this he condemned the world and became an heir to the righteousness that is accordance with faith." Again, the key phrase in these verses is, "And without faith it is impossible to please God. For whoever would approach him must also believe that he speaks, and he rewards those who seek him. So again, faith is the backbone of anything. If you want to be a believer of God, you have to first have faith in God. Now, there's different religions out there that believe in God, but to be a Christian, you have to have faith that Jesus saves you. In a sec, I will talk about this, about different ways Jesus has saved people, and about how even after Jesus died and he rose from the dead, people still didn't have faith. Even his disciples, one of them being Thomas, but even when he had faith in something he didn't see, he was able to be kind of proven wrong. We'll go with that. Again, as I said before I went over verses 4 through 7, Abel, Enoch, and Noah are different stories in the Bible. Most notable being Noah with the ark. Right? It says that by faith Noah, warned by God about events as yet unseen, respected the warning and built an ark to save his household. By this he condemned the world and became an heir to the righteousness that is accordance with faith. Again, he's talking about the ark. God warned him that the earth would be flooded, and he built an ark to save his household. But again, this is something, could you imagine back in biblical times, God was working a little bit differently, sure, but could you imagine in this day, an angel or messenger of God, or even God himself, comes and speaks to you and tells you that the earth is going to be flooded and you have to go build a boat, fill it up with, I think it's 2 of every animal, and it's going to be flooded and I'm going to save you, right? Most of us would be kind of skeptical, but he had faith, and thus he was saved. Faith, again, is the backbone of, even in the times before Jesus was around, faith was pretty much the backbone of, I'm trying to find, appears that my next Bible verse has misplaced itself here, 18 through 26. Okay. Faith saved him. And I want to now bring it a little bit, we're going to jump ahead in time. We're going to talk about the New Testament now. And more specifically, we're going to jump to the teachings and the works of Jesus. Now, it's important to note that between Hebrews and the New Testament, there were many instances of faith. Many instances of how faith is done correctly, done incorrectly, right? Worshipping false idols versus having faith in something that's in God, only in God. Now, the next example I'm going to give about faith and how faith can be super healing. How faith can heal you without even when you have been turn your backs on. I can't speak well today. I'm sorry. I'm thinking about 100 different things here because I have a bunch of Bible verses. What I'm trying to say is that even when you have been turned away, when society has turned their backs on you, when you've been seen, maybe you're a prisoner, maybe you're somebody who's done bad things in society. Even when you have been rejected by society, faith can save you. This is an example of a woman who was restored to life or healed. A little bit of context as before I will read this Bible verse. This is from Matthew chapter 9. And Jesus was on his way to go heal a girl. And this was a girl who people thought had died. And she was actually turned out, Jesus said she was sleeping. Again, it's a different story. But I want to talk about something that happened while he was on his way there. So it reads, "While he was saying these things to them, suddenly a leader of the synagogue came in and knelt before him, saying, 'My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her and she will live.' And Jesus got up and followed him with his disciples. Then suddenly a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak. For she said to herself, "If I only touch his cloak, I will be made well." Jesus turned, and seeing her, he said, "Take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well." And instantly the woman was made well. When Jesus came to the leader's house and saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion, he said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But when the crowd had been put outside, he went in and took her by the hand, and the girl got up. And the report of this spread throughout that district. Again, this is a story, two different instances of the healing of Jesus, but the one I want to focus on is the one about the woman with the hemorrhages. As back in those days, a woman who had been hemorrhaging, you kind of get the connotation there, was seen as unclean. Was most of the rabbis, most of the church leaders, those who had been sent out originally by God to heal, weren't healing these people because they were seen as unclean. So this is a woman who had been suffering for 12 years, said, "If I only touch his cloak, I will be made well." Had faith that for all these 12 years that eventually something will happen. I only need to touch his cloak and I will be made well. That faith, very, very, very important concept, because it's not, only touching his cloak. I mean, that's a tiny piece of him, his clothing, right? He probably had other clothing on, but just his cloak. And that tiny bit of faith saved her. This is a concept that's very, very important that I will talk about in a different reading. But the importance here is that it might take time. Faith in Jesus, in your healing, will take time. It might take time. It might take 12 years. It might take a year. It might take a month. But the healing will eventually come. The goal here is, the point is to have faith. Another reading that I want to talk about is Matthew chapter 14. This is an example of how faith, even somebody as close to Jesus, this is an example of how lack of faith can hurt you. And an example of how somebody, even, I think this is Peter. This was Jesus's, favorite disciple, but he was given the keys to the kingdom of heaven. This is somebody who Jesus loved. Don't say the most. I really don't like saying Jesus loved the most. But yeah, he was his favorite disciple, we'll just say, for the sake of the point of what I'm trying to get at, is this was a very close follower of Jesus. And how even his lack of faith doomed him, but he was still saved. This is Matthew 14, verses 22 through 33. Pretty infamous story. It reads, "Immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side while he dismissed the crowds." So before I continue, I should mention that this was after the infamous story of the bread and the fish, where the crowds, and he was able to divide these fish and bread and feed this massive crowd. So while he dismissed the crowds, after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up to the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But by this time the boat, battered by the seas, was far from land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning he came walking toward them on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It is a ghost!" And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Jesus got out of the boat and started walking on the water and came toward Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You of little faith, why do you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." Again, as I mentioned before I read this, how, lack of faith can doom you, but how salvation can come through that faith that Jesus can save you. This was probably one of the big miracles that Jesus performed while he was alive during his ministry on earth. I should say his ministry is not really over, right? We still have Christianity, but while he was alive on earth. And Peter, who was closest disciple, as I said, had lack of faith, and it doomed him. For a split second, though, but he cried out saying, "Lord, save me." Then Jesus said, "You have little faith, why do you doubt?" So it's important here. The takeaway is, if you have faith, don't doubt it. As we saw with the lady with the hemorrhages, it might take 12 years, but don't doubt that you will be saved. Right? I really like this passage, this story, because it drives home the meaning of what it means to be faithful, to walk on the path to salvation, because it really is a narrow path. How even that tiniest amount of doubt, how something like the weather or something, say human like that, like the weather or something big like that might cause us to doubt our faith. And we're instantly begin to sink, right? We're instantly knocked off that path. However, Jesus will always save. I want to mention also that in a different video, I want to talk about salvation, because I was going to originally talk about it in this video, but it dawned on me that in order to have salvation, you have to have faith that you will be saved. And this is a great example of this, because he cried out, "Lord, save me." Him being Peter cried out to Jesus, and he had faith that he would be saved, and he was saved. But the main takeaway is, don't doubt your faith. Don't have little faith. I shouldn't say doubt. Don't doubt your faith. In the next verse, in the next example of faith, this is something that is a very, very, very important concept in Christianity of how much faith does one need to have in order to be saved? Do I need to have faith that Jesus is going to come back and, take all the bad things away? That's a lot. How much faith do I need to have? Right? My faith that, my hunger will eventually stop. Or I guess you really can't quantify faith, right? But you can. And I want to read this Bible verse, these verses. This is from Matthew chapter 17, verses 14 through 21. It's important to note that it appears that some translations only go up to 20, but I'm going to include verse 21 because older translations include it. It's not bad. But this is the story of Jesus curing a boy with a demon. So it reads, when they came to the crowd, a man came to him, knelt before him, and said, "Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is an epileptic, and he suffers terribly. He often falls into the fire and often into the water. And I brought him to your disciples, but they could not cure him." Jesus answered, "You faithless and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you? How much longer must I put up with you? Bring him here to me." And Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him, and the boy was cured instantly. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, "Why could we not cast it out?" He said to them, "Because of your little faith. Truly I tell you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed," the grain of a mustard seed, "you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. In the verse 21, which some it says other ancient authorities add here, it reads, "But this kind does not come out except by prayer and fasting." I want to save the prayer and fasting thing for when I talk about salvation, because prayer and fasting is something that it's a concept in and of itself. That's a way how you can get noticed, I would say, by Jesus. I really don't like to use that because he notices every single one of us that are faithful, as I said. But this is a way for spiritual healing. And I'll talk about that on a different video. But faith the size of a grain of a mustard seed. So a mustard seed, if you've ever seen it, it's so small. Like I actually have mustard seeds in my spice cabinet, but not with me here. I would say, really don't have much of anything to show you what a mustard seed looks like, but it's tiny, right? If you have faith the size of a mustard seed, it reads, "You will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you." Right? This is, again, an example of how much faith does someone need to have in order to be saved by Jesus. As I'm going through these stories, as I'm going through these verses, starting all the way from Hebrews, right? I mentioned, what is faith? Faith in something that's you can't see, right? Faith in something that is yet to come. We saw this when I mentioned Noah. Then Matthew chapter 9, I talked about the lady with the hemorrhages who was seen as unclean by society, someone who was rejected by society. Oftentimes in society, people feel this way. If you have social anxiety, I feel that. You see all these people going out and socializing, but you're too afraid to talk to people. You feel left out from society. You feel cast away. Those with depression, that's literally all you feel. Trust me, I've been there. But faith the size of a mustard seed can save you. Because, and again, I'll give my testimony on a different time, because I want to save that for an actual video to the channel. But I will say that if I had faith, I was saved from my social anxiety. I was saved from my depression. I was saved from so many things that both I knew what I was doing wrong, and I didn't even know I was doing wrong. Things that were hurting me, I didn't even know it was hurting me. And I'm telling you that I had the tiniest amount of faith. I literally said, okay, well, I need to be healed. Tiniest bit of, the mustard seed size. And I can vouch and say that this is how it works. And we saw this with the lady with the hemorrhages who just touched his cloak. She waited 12 years to finally be healed and was turned away from rabbis and those who are religious authority. All she did was touch the cloak, tiniest bit of his garb, and she was healed. In Matthew 14, we saw an example of somebody who has little faith, but they doubt that little faith and how detrimental it can be, right? How something, and I like to say human, right? Weather, wind, something that's not, because it's complicated, but the way I look at it is it's a human problem, right? You have weather, hunger, famine. Yes, they're big issues, and I'm not saying they're not important issues, but they are big issues, right? But these outside factors that caused Peter to doubt his faith, caused him to sink, caused him to fall off the boat. Right? Other things in life might cause us to fall off our spiritual boat of salvation. Right? When I was battling through my social anxiety with depression in my quest, and it still is a battle, by the way, it's still not over. Right? It's a lifelong thing. Those of us who have social anxiety, depression, anxiety in general, know it's a lifelong battle. I might not ever be cured. I might be cured. Whatever. The point is, I'm being healed. I can tell. If I weren't healed, and I've still suffered from the social anxiety that I had before I turned my life to Jesus, I wouldn't be here live streaming to you. Plain and simple. I was too afraid to go, you name it, talk to anybody, let alone get on a computer and live stream. And, right, but it's these outside factors that cause people to fall. I have outside factors that cause me to become socially anxious again. Right? Maybe somebody says something to me that makes me doubt myself. There's an outside factor. Rather than believing in Jesus and saying, well, it's just a person, I need to move on, right? I doubt, and I end up falling. In Matthew chapter 17, we see how faith the size of a mustard seed can cause something huge to happen, right? You can tell a mountain to move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible, right? Prayer and fasting. And I mentioned prayer and fasting again, very important things, and that's a way you can speak to God. It's a way, I like to view it as a way you're pushing aside human. Food and water is very important. Don't get me wrong, you need that to live. Don't starve yourself, but fasting and prayer is a way you can elevate your spirit to speak to God, because when you fast, you're pushing, the way I see it is you're pushing away human things like food, right? And you're leaving room for your spirit to speak. You're leaving room for your spirit to grow by pushing out this humanistic thing. And through prayer, you strengthen that spirit, right? And we see how, another example of how if we don't have faith, right, in this case, in Matthew chapter 17 with the demon, we saw how even his disciples couldn't cure him because they had lack of faith. Jesus said, "You faithless and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you? How much longer must I put up with you? Bring him here unto me. Because of your little faith, truly I tell you, if you have the faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there." But he was saying that as a response to the disciples asking, why couldn't we cast out the demon? It's important to note around this time, Jesus had given the disciples gifts. People like to use the word powers in this context, but I like to use the word gifts because he gave the disciples gifts to cure people, to cast demons out, to make people walk again. And I don't like to use the word power because ultimately there is only one God with power, and that's God. I don't like to use the word power. It makes someone think, to me, when you say, "Oh, I have power," that means you have authority over somebody. There is only one authority. That's how I see it. But do not doubt your faith is what I'm trying to get at. It might take time. It might take 12 years, but faith, that tiniest bit of faith, can heal you. Even if you have been even if society has turned its back on you. You're in prison. You're in a horrible place in life. You're suffering from anxiety, depression, addiction, whatever the case may be. Have faith that Jesus can save you. Because he can save you. My final set of verses, I want to talk about faith in something that you cannot see. Something that's going to drive home what I'm trying to get at in my argument, and how you can find your proof of God, especially if you're suffering from these things. It reads, this was context. This was after Jesus died. Thomas was one of the 12. This was after Jesus died and rose from the dead. He was walking around. It reads, "But Thomas, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came." But Thomas, who was called the twin, one of the 12, who was not with him when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he has said to them, "Unless I see the marks of the nails in his hands, and I put my finger in the mark of the nails and my hand in his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were again in the house, and Thomas was with them. Although the doors were shut, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." He said to Thomas, "Put your fingers here and see my hands. Reach out your hands and put it in my side. Do not doubt, but believe." Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe." And I really like this because I feel for a lot of people, you have to believe that Jesus can save you. You have to have faith. You have to believe that Jesus is real and he will save you. Believe, faith, the size of a mustard seed, that he can save you. Again, it might take 12 years. It might take a week. It might take however long, but he will save you. It is written, "Blessed are those who have not yet seen and yet have come to believe." And that is what I want to drive home in faith, that without faith, right, you fall off the path. You can't be cured. Things outside of God can impact you. With faith, you can be saved. I gave my examples of anxiety, depression. I gave examples of the Old Testament with Noah about how faith saved him from a flood, of how the woman with hemorrhages who was seen as unclean by society was cured, about how Peter fell off a boat but was saved because he still had faith, right? He believed that Jesus could save him. He said, "Lord, save me," but he still doubted, right? The point of that is kind of a two for one story there. I like to see it as. And in Matthew 17, we have the demon, the child that had a demon, right? We see what happens when you don't have faith. It's almost like that too. It's crazy. And I want to leave it at that. I want to leave it, if you have faith that you can be saved, faith that you can be cured by God, faith that you can be, faith in something you can't even see, right? Maybe you don't even believe that it can happen. Like, maybe you have faith that, I'll use the social anxiety one. I want to be cured of my social anxiety, but I don't think it'll happen, but I still want to have faith. I haven't seen it, but eventually it will come. And when you come to believe, right, in something you have not seen, it says you are blessed. Now, I want to end, I'm going to leave it there. I feel like that was a good, pretty solid, what I wanted to get at here. In my next talk, I want to talk, I might do a reflection on the daily readings, as I haven't really had time to prepare. I want to prepare a little bit more elaborate talk when it comes to salvation, because, right, we see what happens when you have faith. You are saved, right? And this is a way you can be saved, and thus a way, I like to say, you can prove God. These are proofs of God's working on earth. I gave my example of how God saved me. I would say that's a proof of God working in life. Others who are believers, I say the proof of God. I tell people this who ask me, "Where's your proof of God?" It lies within those who have faith and who believe, because they have truly seen, right? Maybe they haven't seen, but they have faith, right? Faith in something that may or may not, that what does Hebrews say? I really like the way they put it. Assurance for things hoped for and for the conviction of things not seen. Correct? But they have faith that something exists, that something is out there that will come and save them, or come and whatever they're asking God for. Right? And that's really where it lies. So far in my talks, I've given forgiveness, how Jesus makes people walk again, or how God makes people walk again through the salvation of Jesus. I gave an example of how important faith is through Jesus, through these readings. And next time, I'm going to talk more, I'm probably going to do a reflection of the readings, of the daily readings, because I want to try to do that once a week. But I also want to talk about salvation, because after someone is healed and after somebody has been saved from God, that's their testimony. If you go and ask a person who has been saved, where's God in your life? They will go on and on and on about how they've been saved. There's your proof of God. Anyway, I'm going to end the thing here. Do I dare check the chat? Yeah. I'm going to end it here with a prayer. End it with the Our Father. I actually have the crucifix with me, and I have a cross that's not a crucifix, because it's personal preference. I don't know. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory are yours, now and forever. Amen. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and watching. Of course, now I check the chat after I'm almost done. But yeah, I'm going to come back and preach next week. Or not next week. I'll be back Thursday or Friday. One of those 2 days. I need time to do other things that I've been called to by God. But I really wanted to reach out. The reason why I like to stream on Devon Live is because it's a platform that doesn't really have a lot of religious things on them. It's a platform that I saw had a lot of dark things on it. No offense to the platform. It's not a bad thing, or I guess it is a bad thing relatively. But the point is, I saw it as an area that needed light. Twitch is another one that I think I might try to switch over, do Twitch and Vaughn Live. I also want to do YouTube at the same time, so I'm gonna have to figure out how I can do all three. Just because I want to archive these as well. That's kind of how I'm doing it. I'll figure something out. But in the meantime, keep praying. Remember, keep having faith, even if it's as small as a mustard seed. Have faith. Everything is possible. You can be cured from anything. Might take time, but have faith. I'll see you guys on the next stream. God bless.